Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Mike, host of the free iTunes program, Psychiatric Secrets Revealed with Dr. Mike, but that's not why I'm here today. This is another Saving Savvy episode, and this time I'm going to rant a bit. And I'm going to rant about my dislike of software subscriptions. Something new for the consumer over the last few years, and something that I don't necessarily think is a good idea for consumers. Great for companies, less good for us. Now, let's be honest. We have used subscription services in this country forever. So if you pay for a cable bill, that's a subscription service. If you pay for internet, that's a subscription service. In fact, if you pay a monthly fee on your cell phone, that's a subscription service. And in some ways, subscription services are good for consumers because you know every month what you're paying out. They're good for budgeting. If I know that my cable bill is so much, I allocate for that cable bill. But there's a problem with subscription services that's psychological. Now, I'm an expert in psychology. I'm a psychiatrist. So how is it that these services can be a problem? When we have a lot of little things in our lives, we tend to put them on the back burner because we have to deal with life in general. So if you have a small subscription to, let's say, cable, we don't really watch much cable, but we have a subscription service, it's less likely for you to go through the hassle of canceling that service or even looking for a cheaper provider because you're plugged into it. It's easy. We have to go grocery shopping. We have to work. We have to deal with our kids. We have so many things going on that this falls by the wayside. And of course, companies know this. They know that once you are linked to a particular service or a particular company, unless you're really, really, really dissatisfied, or unless you're really, really in a financial crunch and you have to make change, you're most likely not going to make change. The perfect example of that is AOL. AOL, American Online. In its time, it was the biggest internet provider, usually doing on dial-up, in the country. Everyone was on AOL. Well, now AOL is just a web service, but do you realize that many people are continuing to pay for the dial-up service that they're not using because they just don't know how to get rid of it, or they're just not thinking about it? I don't know if you remember this, just kind of a side note, but when AOL was in its heyday, it was so impossible to figure out how to cancel the service that some people had to resort to canceling their credit cards because there was no way that they could get in and cancel their service. So that's one way to keep a subscription going, which is to make it so difficult to unsubscribe that people just don't do it. But it's completely unnecessary because most people won't cancel a subscription once they're on it unless there's some great need to do that. So how does this all apply to consumer level software? Well, I think we're starting to see a trend that is disturbing. And that trend, at least to me, seems like it was initiated by Adobe. So Adobe makes all of these really top level products that people use. They make Photoshop, they make Illustrator, and a bunch of other programs that are sort of the de facto standard. And certainly if you were in a big industry and paying subscriptions, it might be a good idea. But if you're a small company or if you're a consumer like I am, it doesn't make a lot of sense because I can use the same software from a number of years ago and it's still going to have just enough utility for me even today. Yes, I want those killer features, but I really don't need them. So when you look at products that are quite mature, that have gone through many, many updates, there's only so many things that they can add. So I know the last time I bought an actual copy of Photoshop, I was just turned on by this content aware function. I thought, wow, this is really fantastic. Really haven't used it that much, but I really liked having it. That was a killer feature. Now, I bet there was probably some plugin that did that already, but I kind of drank the Kool-Aid. But how many of those things can you do, especially as products are changing? So a number of years ago, when I would publish something in 4-color printing, send it off on the internet and get it published for my work, I would have to send that file as a Photoshop file. And because Photoshop files from other software weren't completely compatible, I had to have Photoshop. More recently, when I publish things, I've just sent it off as a PDF file. A lot of programs create PDF files, making, at least for me, Photoshop less necessary in that regard. And I think Photoshop is aware of this, or Adobe is aware of this, and so by hooking people into subscriptions, it's a pretty good deal for them because it gives them a steady income stream, and they can predict their profits, and they're not going to see this dramatic fall off as people start exploring other programs now that they have to. If you think about what Photoshop does really well, it's really great for printing because it had that color profile and all that other stuff. Well, where is most content creation going nowadays? It's going on the internet. There's a lot less printing that's happening, a lot less magazines that are being produced. The pages in the magazines are less. So the need to have this proprietary program is just simply less, unless you need such a high level of functionality, which honestly most of us don't need. But I drank the Kool-Aid. I got a Photoshop subscription, $9.95, $13, $14, whatever it is with tax. Every month I pay it, even though I'm probably editing 5 photos on Photoshop because I use other software that I like more. That's what's going to happen. We see that with Microsoft Word. Again, a super mature product. I will tell you that before I switched to a Mac, I was using a version of Word that was probably at least 8 years old. Now, am I a cheapskate? Not at all. But that software had more capability than I ever would need, not only for my personal use, but also for my business use. It was perfectly fine. The killer features didn't do anything for me. I mean, getting a colored ribbon bar didn't do anything for me. Some extra collaborative thing didn't do anything for me. And now Microsoft, I'm sure, is pooping in their pants because there are so many competing products like Google Docs, which does enough for most people, or even OpenOffice, which does enough for most people. And the de facto Docs file, which you'd have to send to someone else, right, if you wanted them to read your software, is not necessary because you can send a PDF file. And if you're in the same office and you're all using Google Spreads or whatever, or Google Docs, everything is fine. So this is a big cash cow for Microsoft that might be drying up. And so what do? You institute a subscription service and you make a consistent income stream forever. People don't leave subscription services. It's just too much of a hassle. We see this in other areas too. So for instance, I now have a monthly fee for my Apple cloud service. Why is that? Thought I had plenty of free service, but somehow everything backed up and now I've got this gigantic amount of data, and so I'm paying a monthly fee for that. Good or bad? I don't know, but I probably could figure out a way around it, but I don't because I have other things in my life. Another example from Apple is this new streaming music service. Now, they're late to the party. There are other services that are out there that people are using. So again, changing from A to B, people usually don't do that. Apple knows that. It's a very smart company. Well, I'll tell you, I don't have my phone here, but every time I opened up my phone, I thought I was pressing the wrong button after the streaming music service came up because I was continually bombarded by a banner that said something like 30-day free trial, press here, all automatic. It kept on coming up. I don't want a subscription service. I'm an old guy. I like buying my music. I listen to music that I bought 20 years ago on a CD and then ripped to my computer. That's great for me. I like listening to music when I don't have an internet connection. I know some people feel differently, but I don't need that service. But it was shoved in my face. So a lot of companies are going this route because they realize that there's this change that's happening with computers, and there's more and more software that is inexpensive or that's different from these de facto standards, and they are reacting to it. Well, one more thing about Microsoft. The other day I walked into my office. Well, I have two things to say. I walked in my office and there was a big thing on my screen that said, Microsoft Office, enter your product code here. Where's my product code? And the other one is, or subscribe to the 365 service. And I looked, I could not find the X button. Maybe it's there somewhere, so I couldn't find it. I actually had to force quit the banner or the thing on the screen just to move to the computer screen. How aggressive is that? Likewise, with Adobe, last time I upgraded my software, the default was to remove all other copies of Photoshop, which include my personal copy that I bought. It was a little tiny checkbox if you wanted to not use that feature. Well, what would it be like if I got rid of my original copies of Photoshop, which are perfectly good? I pretty much would be stuck with their subscription service unless I could dig through my office and find those old discs and load it up again and figure out where my product code was and all that kind of stuff. So you're seeing this aggressive push, which I find very distasteful. So what would I advise? Well, we're all kind of stuck in this together. I'm not any better than anyone else as far as avoiding this problem. But I think we should really think carefully about subscription services because they're just going to grow and they're going to become more expensive and more limited. So I would predict, in my personal opinion, all this is my personal opinion, by the way, so do it the way you want. This is my personal opinion. But I predict that if everyone shifts, for instance, to Microsoft 365, that 5 computers might become 3 computers or 2 computers because they have your business. Excuse me, I'm dry as a bone. Or it might not be whatever the cost is for the year, it might slowly go up. I'm sure those things are predicted in their models. So the way around that is to use other software, these other little companies that are so glad to get your business. I know Serif, which makes great software for the Windows computer, is now making software for Macs. They have a great photo editor. I'm sort of experimenting around with it and maybe just making the switch to that. Certainly I'm using Google Docs, I'm using Pages, those sorts of software instead of Word more. It's just not necessary in my life. But be aware, if you can use something different, use something different. Think about these subscriptions as not great benefits to you, but great benefits to the company. Naturally, if you have to use a de facto standard, you're stuck, you're going to pay it, and if you're a large company, it might be to your advantage. But most software is not bought by large companies. It's bought by little guys like me, little shops, little publishing houses, little offices that need Word documents. There's just better options. So again, my personal opinion here, your opinion may vary. Feel free to enter it below. You might love subscription services. And if you get some time, please give my free podcast a listen. I would really appreciate it if you gave me a thumbs up. And also, I would really appreciate it if you subscribe to my pretty diverse channel here. Oh, I'm getting dry again. One more sip. And as always, have a great day.